because we don't understand how life formed. It is difficult to estimate this probability. The likelihood of a complex molecule like DNA being created by random collisions of atoms in a primordial ocean is fantastically small. In an infinite universe, it would happen in some places, but they would be very far apart. If we want to find advanced intelligent life, our best bet is to listen for radio signals.
Look up to the stars and the forests that surround. Do you see them? Do you hear them? Are they there? SpacedOutRadio.com presents S4 with Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper and friends. Also, take the time to join the Forest Moon Paranormal Facebook group.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque.
Conspiracy, Area 51, Dogman, Ghosts, Cover-Ups, UFOs. The hidden will reveal itself.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go live on S4 with Eric Cooper.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to S4 with Eric Cooper, broadcasting live from the beautiful mountains of Concrete, Washington. And now, without further ado, your host, Forest Moon Paranormal's own, Eric Cooper.
Hey, good evening, Concrete, and Upriver, and the world. Because we do the broadcast around the world, and that's so awesome. We love our listeners. How you doing tonight, Corey?
I am doing fantastic. How about yourself?
Outstanding. It's been so nice out, 80 degrees. And before we get too far, the opinions and views of S4 do not reflect that of Spaced Out Radio. And oh my God, if you haven't heard of Spaced Out Radio, it's on every night, 9 p.m. to midnight, Pacific Standard Time at www.spacedoutradio.com. So, with that, and I'm losing my train of thought. What the heck? So yeah, this is S4 with Forest Moon Paranormal and Spaced Out Radio. And where am I going here? So I've got to make some announcements real quick. June 9th is the next paranormal discussion at the Lone Star Restaurant if you're local. And June 10th, we are going to discuss aliens and UFOs. on the investigation level. So that's what we'll be doing. And there was something I wanted to say, but no, I've got Seth. Seth is our special weapon. I'm bringing him in momentarily. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, for our new listeners. So the question came up: how do you get in our chat room? Our chat room is at the very bottom of the screen. If you're on the Spreaker chat or listening through Spreaker, you look at the black bar where you see a play button, and it says Live Hollow Earth. You look for a chat, a little chat bubble. You click on that, and you come into the chat room. That's what makes us special. Is we're actually live, and we actually say here you can answer questions as you come in. If you have a question, you put it in caps, just like they do on Spaced Out Radio, and we'll see it and we'll answer it. And tonight we are talking the Hollow Earth theories. So how you doing tonight, Seth? And no, I wasn't forgetting about you.
No, it's all good. I have a little bit of a sinus infection, but I am here. I know you guys broadcast from Concrete, Washington, and you talk to your upriver community. I want to let everybody listening also know that I am taking part in the program from the winding hills of central New York, home of the Loomis Gang, and also the invention of the X-ray machine and the ice cream sundae in Ithaca, New York, which is the hometown of the fictional character Michael Scofield in Prison Break. With that being said, it is the holy month of Ramadan, so all the jinn are chained up right now. Thank goodness for that. But I'm excited. Right? I'm excited to learn about this because we've heard about the flat Earth theory. We've heard about the round Earth theory. Now we're going to hear about the theory of a hollow Earth. I myself haven't been up into space, so I can't make a sound judgment. But I know that you can't mention Hollow Earth without mentioning Admiral Byrd. I also want to let you guys know that you can go to my new Facebook page called Dark 30 Quickening. Now, whenever it's dark outside, it's dark 30. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, whether or not it's morning hours, whether or not it's late night hours, but it is dark 30. And sometimes I will talk about things that may very well get me in trouble, but I don't care. With that being said, I'm excited to be a part of this, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say on Hollow Earth.
Indeed. And happy, I won't even, it's not happy to me. Have a safe Memorial Day weekend, folks. As a veteran and having lost friends and having lost soldiers, yeah, have a safe Memorial Day. People say Happy Memorial Day, and to me, it's not happy. It's a somber remembrance type weekend. It's on a barbecue and be happy kind of thing. It's remember the fallen. You know, I had an uncle that I never got to meet because he passed in Vietnam, and so those are the things I remember. But I hope you all are having a very safe Memorial Day out there. This is Memorial Day weekend. You know, I did actually toss around making a Memorial Day S4, but I was like, nah, we're just going to go with Hollow Earth. Just had to kind of make a judgment call. What do you talk about when you're talking about the topics we do? There's not really much of a Memorial Day thing. I could bring in veteran friends of mine and we could sit and talk veteran stuff, but nah, I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah, you know, it's just as long as everybody knows that, hey, you need to take a moment somewhere along the line in your day on this weekend, and at least take a moment to, you know, give some remembrance to those who have laid down their lives so that we can have, you know, what we have here in this country.
Exactly.
And so many of them laid down their lives for a lot of political nothing, unfortunately. We've lost a lot of sons, a lot of daughters, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters. It's really a sad thing when it all comes right down to it.
And that's another reason we don't discuss that, because the reason they lost their lives really pisses me off, and we'll just leave it at that when it comes to some of these politicians. So Hollow Earth theory, where did it come from? And we're going to go way, way, way back in history with, the idea of subterranean realms actually came from the afterlife, such as the Greek underworld, the Nordic, and I can't even ever pronounce it. The Norse have such crazy words. Svartalheimer, Christians with hell, the Jewish with Sheol, the details describing inner earth in Kabbalistic literature, such as the Zohar. The idea of subterranean realm was also mentioned in Tibetan Buddhism belief. According to one story, there's an ancient city called Shambhala, which is located inside the earth. So did you guys do any research on the actual historical?
As far as myself, I've touched on it before in the past, not necessarily based around the notion that it's hollow earth, but I do have at least a decent knowledge of different subterranean cultures. There had also been different local cultures and Indian myths about creatures that would come out from under the mountains at night, and they would burrow and dwell, and they appeared almost rat-like in nature. And what they would do down south, as I was told, is that they had the appearance of a rat, and they could not enter your house unless you let them enter your house. And they wanted to come in to get some type of food. But as far as Greek mythology goes, I had taken a whole course on it when I was in college. And my professor, I'll name drop him here, I'm sure he'll be happy, Gregory Sidoru. We did learn about the Greek underworld and going across the river Styx to get through the underworld and battling Cerberus, the three-headed dog.
Cerberus,
dealing with Hades, the Lord of the Dead. And really the scary thing about that is there really didn't seem to be a positive side to the afterlife for the Greeks. It seemed like the only ones really benefiting from that were the gods, and everybody else just went below. But I mean, it's plausible. There's so many stories based on it, like Journey to the Center of the Earth. Even in children's cartoons, for example, the theory of Hollow Earth is present. Like, for example, in the Ninja Turtles, the main villain's lair was in the middle of the Hollow Earth. And so it's definitely had a cultural impact. And it's also said that the Centers for Disease Control has, the CDC, has many subterranean levels where the further down you go, the worse diseases and conditions are kept. I don't know if there is any truth to that, but I've heard enough of it. But that's what I have as far as that goes.
So we're actually going to get into that, actually, because we're not just talking the Hollow Earth theory. We're actually talking underground bases, underground, because, I mean, to me, they're all Hollow Earth. We're not, because you can only talk about the North Pole and the South Pole and Admiral Byrd for so long. So we're covering it all. We're covering all the underground bases. We're not going to go into Philip Schneider per se, but we're going to go into the locations where a lot of these underground facilities and bases are. So actually what you just talked about with the underground caverns with the diseases and whatnot is going to come into play, because I believe you're talking about either Utah or Dugway Proving Grounds.
No, I was actually talking about Atlanta, but there is some in Dugway Proving Grounds, yes.
Right. Okay, Atlanta. Yeah, actually Atlanta comes to, Atlanta is on my list. So we'll definitely hit Atlanta. So you got, let's see, with ancient Greeks, there were caverns under the surface, which were entrances leading to the underworld. Some of which were the caverns at Tyneron in Laconia, at Troezenion in Argolis, at Essia in Thesprotia, at Heraclea in Pontus, and yeah, these are all foreign to me, but these are locations around the Greeks, and Hermione in Thracian, and Dacian legends. And yeah, I'm speaking Greek. Woo! It is said that there are underground chambers occupied by an ancient god called Zamoxis in Mesopotamian religion. There's also a story of a man who, after traveling through the darkness of a tunnel in the mountain of Meshu, entered a subterranean garden. Okay, so that's the Greeks. You guys anything to add, Corey?
It's also said that there's caverns below the pyramids of Giza that go all the way down to Hollow Earth as one of the theorized things. As we're talking about different people, you were talking about others from past. There's also one that didn't get mentioned, Mr. Dallas Thompson, who was I guess he was some personal trainer or something, spent his youth in Hawaii, was in Bakersfield, California. Apparently he got in an accident at one point, and he was said to saying that he saw some white light that was so bright that it burned his eyes, and at the same time he got this download of everything that was supposed to be of Hollow Earth. He was actually on Coast to Coast at one point, back when it was still Art Bell. I guess he was kind of even questioned if he was sane at that point, but he apparently stated he was. But apparently at some point down the line here, he was supposed to make a trip to South Pole, I want to say.
That was the North Pole expedition, I think. And he had,
at any rate,
he had some best-selling books that were on the market that he actually pulled.
Yep.
Because he didn't actually, he's on my list as well. But yeah, keep going. Yeah, he actually had best-selling books that he pulled from the market. Because he was going to go on this expedition.
Yeah, and apparently at some point, just prior to the expedition, he disappeared, like off the face of the earth kind of thing. Nobody has seen him since. There's been a couple of people that have tried to find him. One person that is pretty sure they thought they found him, but supposedly it's another person. But this person, same name, same similar background, different stuff like that. But one contact said, nope, you got the wrong, Thompson. You need to talk to somebody else, kind of thing. So it's kind of weird. But it seems like, as I've looked through here, there was a couple of different ones where people were trying to get together funds and things to try to make the expedition to go, and never could seem to do it. One person tried to get it back in the 1800s to go and find out, and every time he turned around, got a big no, mostly from government. And then later on, there was another set of people that were putting funds together, had funds together, and then one guy got, just before he was supposed to go, 6 inoperable brain tumors and died. And then, they reorganized what they were doing. Their little organization was getting ready to go again. And, somebody else got sick and died off. And, another one, somebody heard that they were going to go do this, and a bunch of funds got pulled. It just seems like every time they turn around, they could never make this expedition happen. Nobody could make this expedition happen. Something was working against him for sure. So, is Earth hollow? I don't know. Seems a little, I don't know. Seems a little not possible to me, but there sure does seem to be a lot of resistance to somebody trying to find out.
Right. They don't want you to know. And I actually have Admiral Byrd's diary in my listing of notes here as well. I'm scrolling down. There's a lot of Native American lore that actually talks about Hollow Earth. And has anyone in the chat room heard of the Branson Files? I'm watching as I'm going. And actually, yeah, there's also a president that was involved. I believe you touched on the guy briefly.
It was a senator.
No, President Adams, I think it was. Well, I'm getting down there real quick. And he actually, there's an Army officer that was traveling the country speaking to anyone who would listen and telling them about his theories of a hollow Earth. He was so convinced that his theory was right that he even approached Congress in a bid to secure funding for an expedition to the center of his hollow Earth. Congress said no. The matter could have ended there, but President of the United States was John Quincy Adams, who approved the funding. Unfortunately, Adams proved to be such an unpopular president that he spent only one term in office. The plan to journey to the center of the hollow Earth was later stopped before it could get off the ground, but it was Adams that created the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C., and laid the groundwork for the establishment of the Smithsonian Institute. It was John Quincy Adams, John Teeter.
There was also, in that same realm there was a senator named Richard Thompson who went before Congress after that and presented several times to try to get it to happen, and it just didn't go anywhere. Got pretty much a unanimous no on all of it.
So in certain places, at various times, some people claim to hear a distinct humming sound in their head, which sits on the fringe of their awareness, but which nonetheless can be extremely irritating to them. Not everyone hears the sound, but those who are deeply affected by it, and there have never been cases of people committing suicide after being driven mad by the incessant hum. People hearing the sound are often found within the same general locale, which we're going to get to these locales here shortly, suggesting that they are not making the whole thing up. Now, these hums are all over the place, all over the globe. So Olaf Jansen and his father Jens Jansen are Norwegian fishermen, accidentally discovered the North Pole opening in 1829 in search of the chosen ones of their ancestors, and entered the hollow Earth, where they lived for 2 years with the giant people there. Olaf then returned to Sweden by way of the South Polar opening, after being rescued by a Scotland whale boat from an iceberg. His father was killed when their fishing boat was struck and sunk by the iceberg in Antarctica. Olaf later immigrated to the United States and died in Los Angeles in 1908. And I'm going to have a whole list of books you guys can look up. I mean, some of them actually date back to the 1900s, 1850s, and more recent about the hollow Earth theory. So you can actually do your own research. And that's pretty much the idea of our show, is we'll present you the research we found, and you can go on with it and prove us wrong. Not prove us wrong, but find out more information than we can.
Yeah, take it and continue.
So exactly. So I'm the man whom Bruce Walton discovered was William Morgan, was sent to the hollow Earth by the Freemasons with an inner Earth guide through a cavern in Kentucky in 1827. Carl Unger reached our hollow Earth in 1943 as a refugee from World War II in the German submarine U-209 captained by Heinrich Brada, and wrote a letter back to his friend in Houston, Missouri, Tawani W. Shush, from the hollow Earth interior of our Earth. And then, of course, we all know about Admiral Byrd. Flew through the North and South Polar openings in his airplane in 1929, through the North Polar opening in 1947, and again through the South Polar opening in 1956. Reinhold Schmidt, as reported in Alec Macmillan's book, The Hollow Earth Enigma, was taken by a flying saucer from the Bakersfield Quarry, California, to our hollow Earth through the North Pole opening on August 14, 1958, and returned 5 days later. Retired Colonel Billy Woodard was taken in a flying saucer to our hollow Earth through the North Pole opening at the age of 12 in 1964 and returned 6 months later. Later, while working at Area 51 in Nevada, he was taken to our hollow Earth 4 times on special missions for our military in a hollow Earth tunnel train after Area 51 workers broke into their tunnel beneath Area 51. And there's a YouTube video of that interview. And hold on, Chris, what are you asking? Let me move this. Clarify what type of hollow Earth I propose. The Edgar Rice, hold on. Edgar Rice Burroughs one with the Earth like a whole other sun. And actually, we're getting there, Chris. We're getting there. There's a lot of different theories out here, which is what we're bringing to you. We got Dr. Hank Craftsman, Los Angeles attorney, was taken by Carl Kopavi Waltz of the Waltz clan of the Hopi Nation through an entrance to the hollow Earth in 1961 near the Grand Canyon, Arizona. Phoebe Marie Holmes, in her book, My Visit to the Sun, relates how she was taken by 2 angels to the hollow interior of our outer sun to visit her mansion in the New Jerusalem, being built there for us by Jesus and all the prophets and saints after the Earth's resurrection into a celestial world after the year 3020. The New Jerusalem will be brought from the sun and will take the place of our inner sun to be the home of all of us, worthy of becoming celestial beings. And there's some that actually think we're in the hollow Earth, and all the planets and our solar systems and whatnot go to the outer Earth. You guys heard that theory?
I have actually heard that theory, and in a roundabout way, and don't laugh at this, but in a roundabout way, it goes along the lines of going in tandem with the flat Earth theory. And what I mean by that is if you imagine a snow globe that is halfway filled, and you think, like, when you guys were in science class and they have you make a terrarium, right? And you have your plastic on top, and you take a little bit of the dirt and you add the water to it, and you see the process of the condensation and the water coming back down. Some people think that the Earth, hollow as it is kind of acting as a terrarium where the water gathering in space kind of shields us as a bubble. Like when you go into space and you see how the astronauts will take like their tang and it'll float when there's no gravity and it's a ball, but they could like have an M&M floating right in the middle of it. And some people think that may be the case. I don't know if there's any truth to it, but I will find the image and I will actually put it on my Facebook page, and you guys can share it to the correct places.
The only problem, the only problem that I see with that theory is you're talking about outer space, you're talking about a bubble of liquid with an M&M floating in the center of it. You're still talking zero gravity, The problem is here on Earth, it's very well known there's gravity. I mean, you jump off a cliff, you're going to go splat, period. And we have that gravity here. So the question is how would that work? In space, yeah, I see that, with something like an M&M and a drop of water, and I can see how somebody could, without having any scientific thought about it, could go, yeah, this could work. This is how hollow Earth would work. But when you look at the reality of it, we have a considerable amount of gravity here on Earth, and I don't see personally, just a theory, how that would work with one floating inside the other.
Exactly. And I'm scrolling down. I'm looking for the actual list of locations where there's underground bunkers and whatnot. Now, so keep talking. By all means. So I know which one. I know which one you're talking about in Egypt, because it's on the list as well, as far as underground locations. So Afghanistan. There's an ancient legend among the Hindus of India that tells of a civilization of immense beauty beneath Central Asia. Several underground cities are said to be located north of the Himalayan mountains, possibly in Afghanistan, or the Hindu Kush. The subterranean Shangri-La is inhabited by a race of golden people who seldom communicate with the surface world. From time to time, they travel into our land through tunnels that stretch in many directions. Entrances to the tunnels are believed to be hidden in several of the ancient cities of the Orient. Tunnel entrances are said to be in Ellora and the Ajanta caverns of the Chandora mountain range of India. So, I never made it to Afghanistan. I was right next to the Turkish mountains, the Turkish range between Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. And there is Navy EOD that actually got to go into Syria. And actually got to go in the caves there, which that would have been kind of cool. Because they actually still found some of the remnants of the goddess worshippers with the statuary, the cave drawings, and that kind of stuff. So that would have been cool. So in Brazil, we have one tunnel in Brazil is near Ponta Grossa in the state of Parana. Another entrance in Brazil is near Rincon, state of Parana, also in the state of Santa Catarina, Brazil, near the city of Joinville. There's a mountain containing an entrance to the tunnels. St. Catarina is an area alive with subterranean activity, including strange singing from underground. Another entrance in Brazil is in the state of Sao Paulo, near Concipio. And another entrance in Santa Catarina near Gaspar has subterranean fruit orchards. Now, that'd be kind of cool, huh? Having an underground peach tree.
I would just like to be able to, I would just like to be able to go straight underground and not have to deal with society as it is. Because when you talk about the Hollow Earth thing, one thing that really raises my eyebrow is we know that the elite have been building bunkers for years and years and years, and not trying to give him any positive credit, but one of the first to really do that was Hitler, and a lot of his experimentation into the occult led him and his movement to work on their bunkers and such. And many of the elite modeled their bunkers that are in this earth after what he did. And I'm not really hearing of anybody, striking the magma when they're digging for these things. I know, we have volcanic activity, this and that. I get that. But in school, we're led to believe that the whole center is this ooey gooey molten lava pizza roll that's just going to burn everything up when we get there. But that seems to be not the case, because these bunkers and such are on the rise, and secret military bases.
We get a lot of stuff that's been dug underground. And there has been a lot of drilling that has gone very, 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 very deep. And the bottom line is from I've never heard from any of that anything about finding another civilization. Now, could we have alien bases and stuff underground? Different things like that. Have our own military bases underground pretty far deep? Sure, you betcha. And I think there's probably plenty of those. Is there a complete civilization that is, towards the center of this planet? I don't know. I personally have a hard time wrapping my head around that one. It just doesn't seem that plausible to me.
Well, and that's one of those things you have to see to believe. I mean, and that's for all of us. Just like with the flat Earth, unless you saw the 6 mile wall of ice around the Earth, you wouldn't believe that either. I mean, I don't anyway. But yeah, it's just one of those things you have to get your own expedition, go out there and find it. It's the only way.
One thing that makes it semi-plausible to me, and what I mean is iffy, I guess, is when you go further and further down into the caverns, like some of the scientists have sent their equipment and things further into the caverns, you'll notice that different animals and insects have evolved to adapt to life like that. For example, there are way deep down moles and spiders that actually do not have any eyes whatsoever because they live so far down that they do not see and they don't need to see. And then we have the science fiction movies. One of them that comes to mind is The Descent. I mean, this Earth is a very big place. Is it hollow like a dollar store Easter egg? Who knows? But we know that so far down that there is space that's being occupied. So the question I have, Eric, and all your 98 pages of research that you have is which base, structure, or otherwise is known to be the deepest down out of all of them. We know that like Mount Everest is the tallest when you count the snow caps. When you don't count the snow caps, the tallest mountain in the world is actually in Hawaii. But with that being said, what is the base that is known to be the lowest of the low?
I don't have an answer for you until we get to the list of U.S. locations. And our list is extensive and goes global. So I don't have a good answer for you as far as military bases go, because I've never been able to prove. You got Mount Weather, which I believe Mount Weather is Utah. Someone correct me here. It's either Utah or Montana. And, and that's my question, because you bring up the point that, spiders and moles and whatnot go down to a certain level and don't have eyes. Well, so if you've got a civilization that lives under, subterranean in the middle of the earth, there would have to be a sun. There would have to be an environment that they would already be adapted to, as far as, being able to see and whatnot, because the stories that come out of it, they look like us. They communicate like us. Some of them are light beings that communicate telepathically and whatnot. They're more advanced. Like with Admiral Byrd, he was talking about the algorithm, the Algarda, the Algardans, I think it was. And there were giants, if I remember right. I maybe mixing some of them up. I think it was Admiral Byrd that was talking about giants, though, wasn't it? Lori?
I don't know on that one. I didn't get a chance to read up on Admiral Byrd, but But, you know, as I'm looking at things here, I mean, you look at how, and it was mentioned, I saw it mentioned in the chat room as well, that, you know, there's a lot of these animals that still have eyes. They don't function, but they still have eyes that are way down deep, you know, in these caves and down underwater. And it's just an adaptation. I mean, for there to be a hollow earth and a whole civilization, because you read about some of these things where you see that there's supposed to be ancient tribes and stuff that are down in these areas, and all these different civilizations, advanced civilizations and such. You know, there's going to have to be some kind of light source, you know, for them to be able to even function. I mean, if we didn't have the sun here on Earth, we'd be an absolute mess. For one, we'd pretty much freeze to death. But for two, you know, just on the light aspect of it, being able to do everything we do, we'd be braille readers all the time, every one of us, because our eyes wouldn't function. Right. No light. This is some of the things that I sit here and I look at, you know, this hollow earth, and I go, it just doesn't make any sense. How are you going to have this massive light source like the sun inside the earth for this whole civilization, and I may add, have it and not have it burn them all up? Because you got to think about the type of intensity that the sun puts out just for us to be able to see how many thousands of miles away, and to have that same type of light intensity for a complete hollow earth. It just doesn't fit.
It would have to be a smaller sun.
It doesn't fit. When you talk about it from a natural standpoint, and the only roundabout that I could think of is if it was a civilization that physically hollowed it out. You never know. But one thing I'm thinking about here is with Admiral Byrd. It's Agartha you guys were talking about, or Coop you were talking about. And in his expeditions, I mean, it's pretty amazing when you wrap your mind around it. And a lot of the governments have really guarded some of these similar expeditions, except what we know about Admiral Byrd. And so many people are jumping on the bandwagon that the Earth is hollow, and I really don't know why that governments would keep it hush-hush either way. But before we get into Admiral Byrd, I have something for you guys to ponder now. We have NASA who explores space. For any of these other theories, how come there isn't an equally governing body that is trying to get to the bottom of whether or not the Earth is flat or hollow? I know we have our theorists and people who try to prove one way or another, but we have NASA who is backing, you know, the idea that the Earth is round. Forget the NASA conspiracies, because you got to consider that a round Earth and a flat Earth could very well still be hollow inside. We didn't create it. And we're speculating based on the scientific knowledge that we have. Without a full and complete understanding of the universe, we are still a relatively very, very, very young species in this universe. Now, envision the Earth, you know, kind of like a bead, and we're on the surface. And the holes would be the north and the south poles. You know, the hole that you would put your string through, or your wire through. Now, with the right equipment, theoretically, we may be able to travel through there and see what we can see. Now, one thing is a lot of hollow earthers believe that UFOs travel from the hollow earth, and a lot of these alien bases are from the Earth's hollowed out points, rather than them flying light years away. And if you don't think about things like black holes and stuff for a minute, it's a pretty plausible theory. It would be the perfect getaway. You know, you have your TV shows where the villain has their secret lair well below the earth, like I said. But the hollow earth theory has several proponents throughout history. Like you said, rooted with the Greeks under the Giza pyramids. But Admiral Byrd, in the early 20th century, he was an adventurer and explorer, and he did it all. And I really don't think there's anybody since him who has done much more for that idea. Now, he was a U.S. Navy officer, and he specialized in navigation. So in 1926, he created the first ever flight over the North Pole. But some people say that he never really ever reached it. But the next year, he did a transatlantic flight and made history again. Now, being that he was adventurous to begin with, he decided he was going to go balls in and try to go to Antarctica. So when he visited, he actually made more than one visit. A lot of people think that he just made one visit. No, he went there quite a few times. And he really paved the way for other explorers to go through this. But yeah, when he went down there, he described the race of the Agarthan people, and some people refer to it as Ariana on some accounts. Where's my notes going? But he spoke with a representative of the city, and they basically bitched him out for humanity's invention of the atomic bomb, and they told him that a dark age is coming if humans don't shape up or ship out. And after visiting with them for some times, he was sent away with specifics on how to relay the message to people.
Well, I got a couple of thoughts here as you're talking about this stuff. You asked the one question, why would the government continually try to stifle it, so to speak? The government likes to keep us thrown off our balance. They really do. We've got aliens that we're all pretty sure we know are there. No one can defiant or definitely say yeah, except for those who have experienced. Okay, and the government likes to cover that stuff up. We've got all these different conspiracies, as we call them. A lot of them are probably pretty much fact, that the government likes to cover something up. So why not take something like this and cover it up, but for nothing else but to keep us thrown off our game? Here's something that could be. I say could be because I don't know. I'm just guessing. This is just theories coming out of me, and I guess tonight I'm being the skeptic. I'm still open to it. There's a possibility. But, why not take something that could be complete BS, could be, I say, and cover it up like everything else just to keep us off? Now, as far as the UFOs go, we've already pretty much established, we know that there's several of these different races that like to have underground bases, and some of them pretty deep. So there's nothing saying that one of them can't be down at the South Pole, and maybe there's a couple of them down at the South Pole, and they found a real nice tucked away hideaway spot somewhere deep down in the Earth's crust from that center point. That apparently works out real cozy for them. That's just my thoughts
on it. Okay, and let's talk about them real quick. So we're gonna talk about the states and all the underground bases we've got here. That's where we're going to go with this. So, were you guys aware that any airline pilot is not allowed to fly directly over the poles?
No, I wasn't.
It's against the law. They're not
How
allowed to
come?
fly over the pole.
I would imagine
Well,
it
think
supposed
about
to mess with their navigation.
And also think about it. Admiral Byrd, when he flew over the poles, he didn't fly over the poles. He flew into the inner Earth, in theory. So if you stretch your mind a little bit and think along those lines, that if you fly over the poles, you won't fly over them. You'll fly into the Earth and wind up in Elgarda. They wouldn't want you to find that.
And like I said, there's theories of that's very possible. I would imagine the excuse they give for their pilots for them not to do that is that the magnetic fields will screw up their navigation. Now,
right?
Whether that's true or not, who knows? But my theory is why they don't want to let them go over the poles is there's something a little bit more sinister than Hollow Earth. I think it's more of either. We've heard of the secret space programs that they have. What a better way to hide something like that than put it at the poles. We've heard, and of course we know about, the different alien races and some of them that we've made backdoor shady shake hand deals with, from our government. So, these guys, if these particular races are hiding at the poles, of course they ain't going to want anybody flying over. That would be my thought on that.
Right, and Chris brings up a good question of what would the government's reason for not disclosing the fact that there was an inner civilization or an inner Earth? How would that have an adverse effect on, the citizens of the world? And I don't have an answer for you, Chris. I honestly don't. I mean, unless they just don't want us intermingling with, a higher being, I have no idea. I really don't. Or there's something more sinister in the Hollow Earth that would kill us, and they don't want to let it out. That's all my mind can go with. You guys got an idea?
Well, that goes back to the thought that I had before of, let's throw another thing into the cover-up pile to just keep everybody off their game. Just my thought.
Yeah, that makes sense, Corey, because I mean, if I was an all-powerful super world government, I might even cover something up just because I could, just for shits and giggles. Just to do it and say that I did it. I cover up the most asinine of things, and just troll the entire world. The moon is made of cheese sort of thing. Keep it all for myself, But really, here's a scary thought. If you think about this, y'all heard before about how the Russians supposedly dug a hole several miles down and lowered a microphone.
Yeah, Noah Schwabstein.
Mm-hmm. They supposedly recorded sounds from hell. Now, granted, we have our underground bases. Granted, we have supposed species living there. But wouldn't it be scarier to think for a minute, if you will, that hell would be an actual physical place on Earth that we could reach while living versus dying and going there? That would bring things to a whole nother level of epic, esoteric proportions.
Heck, I always said that hell was probably on Earth anyways. But I like something that Joe here, Pointy Stick Joe, said. Well, maybe it's not a physical opening at the poles, but a warp in space-time due to the magnetic fields. Hey,
Very possible.
There's a good theory. Especially
Yeah,
if
Joe
aliens are
wins.
using it. Especially if aliens are using something like that. Heck, they could be using that thing as a slingshot to get to wherever they want to go. I like it, Joe.
Exactly. And that's
You know,
what we
I
love
like
our
that.
listeners. They come up with the best
Thought-provoking.
ideas. So we have Edwards Air Force Base. So from Edwards is a tunnel that goes to Vandenberg Air Force Base. From Vandenberg, you back up to Edwards and go southeast to Subterranean Base at a place that the map designates as CAT, which probably means Catalina Island, showing a flying saucer there, so alien spacecrafts are probably seen there. The map shows an underground base and a tunnel going into it at a place called 29 Palms. This is a whole series of tunnels, by the way. The next place on the map where an underground base is the Chocolate Mountains. There appears to be a site in Nevada at Tonopah, Area 51 at Groom Lake, and a place designated as Cog Air Force Base. So in Arizona, we have the Grand Canyon. You guys heard of the tunnels in the Grand Canyon?
No, honestly, I haven't heard of any tunnels in the Grand Canyon at all.
All right.
No.
In the Grand Canyon, you have caves near the confluence of the Colorado and Little Colorado rivers. Hopi legends say that their ancestors once lived underground with a friendly race of ant people, not to be confused with the sinister mantis people described by several abductors. But some of their kind turned to sorcery and made an alliance with lizard or serpent men known as the Two Hearts, which dwelt in still deeper caverns below. The flood of evil and violence forced the peaceful Hopis to the surface world. An explorer named G. E. Kincaid claimed to have found one of the ancient caves in which were reportedly discovered Oriental, Egyptian, and Central American type artifacts. Smithsonian archaeologist S.A. Jordan and Associates also explored the man-made cavern with hundreds of rooms, enough to hold over 50,000 people. The underground city is about 42 miles upriver from El Tovar Crystal Canyon and Crystal Creek, and about 2,000 feet above the riverbed on the east wall. John Rhodes, after 3 years of field research, reportedly discovered the Grand Canyon City, which is now being used as a museum for elitist groups. Oh, imagine that, elitist groups. Aren't they wonderful? And has lower levels that are being used by super secret black book operatives, which can only be entered via a stainless steel door at the bottom of a stairwell, deep within the city that is guarded by a very lonely soldier, staring into the darkness, dressed in a white jumpsuit and armed only with an M16 assault rifle to ward off his imagination. That came from the Arizona Gazette. March 12th of 1909.
That's an interesting story for sure. 1909. Would you say, what kind of gun did you say he dropped down in there with?
That's what I don't get. It's dated 1909. It's got to be a misprint.
Perhaps not.
You never know. So in Sedonia, of course, you all have heard of Sedonia, Arizona. Famous for its massive vortexes, it's claimed to be an ancient colony of the Lemurians. According to Commander X, there are reports of a joint operational underground city and facility under the Enchantment Resort in Boyd Canyon, where clone-like men in black have been seen, along with unusual electromagnetic vortex phenomena. That one I wouldn't be surprised, because I've heard so much about Sedonia. And then we have the Superstition Mountains. Several people claim to have had experiences with all types of alien beings inhabiting underground levels below the Superstition Mountains east of Phoenix. Early reports speak of humans and human dwarfs. And, of course, we've talked about the human dwarfs on the Alien Race show, actually. Inhabiting the caverns of the region, although in the 20th century reports of reptilian and gray-type aliens have increased. Some encounters involved white grays from Epsilon boots. We know about that race, too. Humanoids or reptiloid Deros. in black hooded cloaks using abducted programming humans above and below as mind slave or worse, reptilian humanoids with integrated human DNA abducting and raping women, and various other aggressive underground scenarios. So that's in the Superstition Mountains. And Joe is saying people disappear in the Superstition Mountains. Why? I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, yeah, if you got the tall whites there, they're known to kill and eat humans.
Yeah. Why, hell, the reptilians and the Greys alone, you disappear.
Yeah.
But you don't hear about the Mater. I've yet to find anything about the Mater other than the Alien Race book. I find that odd.
I think that some of that has to do with the fact that they get mistaken for Greys. I think most people don't
possible.
realize it. I think most people just mistake them for Greys is the problem. They don't realize that they're dealing with another race. It's not a Grey subspecies. It's a complete race of their own. And the Mater, I mean, they're stated to be their hatred is, and the known hatred of human beings is like comparing a volcano to a flower. We're talking about huge difference. So it's, you're talking about a race that has been so bold to say to them, say to basically everybody, and eventually they're going to become the she, the complete rulers of everything. So they're not a group to be messed with. But like I say, I think the reason you probably don't hear enough about them, you hear about them here and you hear about them there, but you don't hear about them as much as I think that most people that have had experiences with them or have seen them or something that type of nature mistake them for Greys. Two is the other thing is that they're known mostly for hanging around military bases. They're not known for hanging out and about amongst everything else. They mostly like to hang around the military.
Yeah, most of them do. In fact, Fort Huachuca, Arizona is our next one, and that's had and possibly still does have a large underground and tunnel system that is occupied by a top-secret communications and cryptography unit. Now, I was in 29th Signal at Fort Lewis, but our headquarters was at Fort Huachuca. That's like one of the biggest signal bases in the Army. So I have no doubt about this one. NSA either commands or has peripheral use of the facility. The Arizona military site is also one of the many designated detainment or concentration camps authorized by our government under the Homeland Security Act. Is martial law if martial law is necessarily declared. And you got to understand, too, Fort Huachuca is right next to the Mexican border, or in that region. So it makes sense that they'd have a... honestly, and we won't even go into the concentration camps because, that's another show if we ever got that route. But in fact, I think we did concentration camps last year. But the more you look at it, the more you look at the locations of them, they're next to the borders. They're next to most of the border states. And so it makes sense for them to have them there to detain illegals that are coming in. I'm not going to sit and worry about it as far as concentration camps go. I actually had a guy that showed me a picture of a convoy, but the picture of the convoy was military personnel. It wasn't anything UN or anything negative like that. Trying to get comfortable here.
Yeah.
So in Arkansas, we have Cushman. Caverns west and northwest of the town are legendary for stories of deep cavern systems, encounters with hairy humanoids with an attitude, giant serpents and insects, deadly gas pockets, strange electromagnetic phenomena, and unexplained disappearances. But here you go, Mr. Paulides. Here's where all your people are disappearing. One of these is Blowing Cave, which lies in the mining area northwest of Cushman, is located 1/4 mile north of a road leading west of Cushman. one of several caverns in the area, some of them possibly connecting at the deeper levels between the large entrance and an underground lake far back in the caves, a trail that winds through an area of rubble or breakdown. So, the more we're looking at it, people disappear at all these hot spots. And with some of them, we hear this words electromagnetic. That tells you right there, vortex, potentially.
No, I know of a few in New York from my research. I don't know if you want to hear about them now or if you have another list.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to go through? Okay, well, a few hours north of me in the Adirondack Mountains, there's one they're still trying to figure out. They do not know the function of it or how many levels, and nobody with any top secret clearance has really spoken out. Now, there is one in New York City, and it tunnels all the way to Washington, D.C., and it's around Midtown Manhattan, and it can be reached through an abandoned elevator shaft that only a handful of people know about. And it's a triangular system of tunnels that they say is used by the Masons below the surface of Manhattan's. And this source is from Tunnels and Caverns Beneath New York City, and the article came out in 1981. And what happened was Con Ed was drilling a test hole in the north end of the East River Park, and it broke through to open space roughly 200 feet below that, and they spotted that there was a cavern, and they really don't know much else except that the Masons are using it. Manchester, New York, they don't know the functions, but they say that there is a stash of ancient records engraved on metal plates, which are inside an underground room in a hill called Camorra, and not far near Manchester, Ontario County, New York. They say that it was left by a race of Hebrew descendants that came to America in ancient times, like way before America was supposedly discovered. Some claim that this story might be a fabrication, but others say that there may be more truth to it. And then, of course, we know of Montauk, New York. And it's okay. There's 9 levels, and it tunnels all the way to Rochester and Rome. Rome is not that far. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And it tunnels from Rochester to Rome, and that's quite a distance because Rome is not far from here. And it's below Camp Hero at Montauk Point, Long Island. Now they say, I can't pronounce this, is occupied by Siakars from Alpha Draco, Greys, aliens from Orion, Black Ops, and German intelligence, Thule Society agents, the Montauk mind control experiment, as you know, and space-time manipulation projects, and as well as at least a quarter roughly other bases. A lot of abductees from MILLAB have also been reported to have been taken there and have seen signs and things like that that prove that they were there. Now, entrances supposedly exist under the old 7-story Montauk Tower near the Sage Radar Tower and the buildings to the north under the old Montauk Air Force Station at Block Island, East Hampton. Right in a hill, there's a lighthouse there that is kind of a landmark for people who are supposed to be looking for it to find it. And these in the cliffs that are overlooking the camp and the beaches, they say that there are bunkers there in different containers that hold different secret things that they're really not talking about.
You know, it's you were talking about tunnels, and if you think about it, just about every major city that you can think of has some sort of discovered tunnels underneath it, including Seattle, right out here in Washington. It's got tunnels underneath it too. And you have to think about why. Why would there be tunnels under every major city? Well, every major city is where, you know, this is where the populace is. This is where, you know, your money is, your power is. You know, you have to think that, you know, it's these ancient organizations and, you know, like the Illuminati and such, that were probably the ones that were doing this. I mean, you know, if you're going to do underground business, what better place to do it than, well, underground? And I think that that's probably a lot of where that's at. As you see it, just like I said, in almost every major city, there's some sort of underground tunnel set up. And I would venture to say that it's probably these ancient groups that are still working today that have been doing that, and I would be willing to bet that in each one of these tunnels that, you know, they fix them all up and they do this, and you can do tours and stuff. There's still sections of those tunnels that they don't let you in. You can't tell me that they've done all that work. You know, that it's
yes, Joe, it was the Masons. Joe's taking offense that we blame everything on the Masons, but Joe's a Mason.
Yeah. That's something I wanted to bring up. Bob in the chat room had stated, he says, everything that is true coming out in the sci-fi movies like Men in Black. You know, the thing of it is that film and art imitates life. And these guys didn't just pull this stuff out of their head. You know, you got Star Trek, you've got some of these different alien movies that have come out in more recent times. Lots of these different conspiracy movies and stuff. There's a reason they're there. You know, somebody is trying to tell a story without getting clipped, basically.
And you know what's funny? With the X-Files, with the X-Files, the FBI actually got involved with the show. And they watched for a while, but they liked what Chris Carter was doing. So they kind of used the X-Files to release information to an extent. I saw that in one of the interviews that was done a while back. So, yeah, that should tell you right there that some of these movies that come out that look like a possibility or look like, you know, they might have some truth to them, they might. You just don't know what's being released. And while we're on Washington, we're going to jump into Fort Lewis, my favorite spot. Not really, but so in Yelm, Washington, and some of you have heard me tell this on other shows, but in Yelm, Washington is a group called the Rompins. And they started with a kitchen, this kitchen wife in the 40s named J.Z. Knight. She was in her kitchen, and she was channeled by this being named Ramtha. And he told her to go to Washington State. So she did. And believe it or not, she actually came from Roswell, New Mexico. And so she went to Washington State, to Yelm, and she bought this 120-acre estate from Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine's behind it. And they actually make millions today. And they do healing seminars and alien seminars. They believe in the reptilians that live in Mount Rainier. And there's supposed to be tunnels. If you do a Google search for Madigan reptilians, and you'll pull up all kinds of stuff. And so Fort Lewis, there's reports that state that Madigan Military Hospital, 50 miles south of Seattle, is being used by aliens to process military personnel into an alien agenda. The hospital is very high-tech, with at least 3 underground levels that are off limits to both civilian and military personnel. Many claim that most of the workers of this Army hospital are not human, and a powerful electromagnetic field has been reported within and surrounding the hospital. The nearby Fort Lewis has been implicated in certain New World Order predatory activities. Now, I worked at Madigan for a while, and it's 7 floors. It's got floors in between floors that are supposed to be for robots. I know that much. As far as anything that goes underground, never found that. Not saying it's not there, because I'm not going to be able to find it if it is there. But the old Madigan, which is across the street and is all, mind you, all one level, because it was designed back in World War II, has elevators that go down. Now, why would you have an elevator that went down unless there were a tunnel? I've actually got pictures of the elevators, actually, and you can't open them. But there's supposed to be tunnels that go from Mount Rainier to Old Madigan Hospital. Now, that's also where I encountered my second reptilian encounter, so I know they're there. Do they live in Mount Rainier? I wouldn't be surprised. I've actually had cases where I heard of people being ripped out of their tents backwards, and it wasn't an animal that did it.
Well, you talk about seeing those elevators and you can't open them up. Well, you can't open them up, but somebody can.
Somebody can. And there's also across the street from this old Madigan is where I've told about the farm, and that's real eerie. It feels reptilian. We'll just say that. It's got chain link fence. It's got a very small parking lot, but a lot of people go in. Always makes you go, Because, I mean, they got cameras. It's a little rundown-looking building. So, yeah, someone with a clearance can open the elevators, like Robert just said. But, yeah, and that's Fort Lewis. Fort Lewis, and like Joe said earlier, it's full of Bigfoot. That's supposed to be where they took Bigfoot in the 80s, back when Nelson Helms blew up. And the National Guard took the 2 living Bigfoot to Fort Lewis and then transported them wherever they transported them to. Haven't found any evidence of that one, though. But another theory. Also in Yakima, an alien base reportedly lies below the Yakima Indian Reservation, southeast of Tacoma. And there's another one in Ellensburg, but one in Ellensburg. There's only 3 Washington State on this list. And that's just Fort Lewis, Ellensburg, and there's Tacoma. So the story in Tacoma, a strange hole in the backyard of Jim and Harriet Johnson's home, which devours everything thrown into it. Cavers explored the hole and saw 3 cone-shaped stones that they could not explain. The Johnsons built a deck over the hole and planned to sell the house after former owners related their own experiences. The original owner told of being lowered down the hole only to have his oil lamp sucked out of his hands, while another told of filling the hole with marble and all kinds of stuff, but the hole erupted, spewing stuff all over. I'd like to find that house. Another filled the hole with old tires, but the hole seemed to consume the tires, which began sinking out of sight. That was Everett Herald, 1980. Now, that'd be a cool house to go check out.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know what's down that hole that can spit marble back out of there, because those weren't just light little chunks of marble.
And it just made me think, so what are you guys have heard about lakes being sucked dry and sinkholes that come out of nowhere. So it makes you wonder what causes them.
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, not far from here, we have Green Lakes. and it's actually a lake on top of another lake, and it is so deep that they have never found the bottom. And so actually it's the perfect place for people to discard any evidence of any wrongdoing. But there is a drop-off point where you are told do not go swimming there. And they've even tried sonar, and they cannot find the bottom. And my wife goes there at least a couple times a week as part of her job. She takes someone there because they like to visit the place. And there's no bottom to the lake. So I often wonder if that very well couldn't be an entrance to something through the water.
Any UFO activity over it?
Yeah, actually there has been. I can find dates. We had UFOs just over Oneida Lake not long ago, probably a couple weeks ago. Let's see, I'm going to Google it right now. Green Lakes, New York.
It's Green Lakes, New York, Joe.
Yep.
Now, actually, Corey, we have a lake like that here. Devil's Lake up above Big Lake is supposed to be bottomless as well. Not sure if you heard of that one.
Green Lake State Park.
Above Big Lake? No. I've heard of
yeah.
a couple other lakes and stuff, but I didn't know that Devil's Lake was supposed to be bottomless. I'm going to speak kind of on a scientific level. No, I'm not a scientist, but one of my favorite subjects when I was in school. So, you look at your sinkholes, and there are a number of things. Bob brought one of them up. I believe it was Bob who said it. That, you've got lava tubes. Okay. Lava tube could easily turn into a sinkhole. You have got aquifers that dry up that could turn into a sinkhole very easily. And then we look at it on the little more conspiracy type thought of things, and you've got the different groups that were digging tunnels underground. Those can turn into sinkholes. You have mining that digs holes down there. Those can turn into sinkholes depending where it goes to. And then we go a little more fringe, and we look at, alien races that have bases and stuff underground. They dig in tunnels and stuff. Those can turn into sinkholes. So there's a lot of reasons for sinkholes. But sinkholes that spit stuff back up at you, that's a little different.
Right. And Chris has a question. Chris has a question real quick. Has any investigator spoken to the sand rats, the men and women who perform underground drilling and tunneling? Actually, look up and if you've been into this for a while, you probably already know about them, but look up the Philip Schneider lectures. Philip Schneider was actually supposed to have been a geologist that tested the soil for explosives to build underground bases. And he was actually in the Dulce, New Mexico battle. So look up the Philip Schneider lectures. He did 15 lectures before they killed him. He died of mysteriously his I believe it was IV tubing wrapped around his neck, and he was found dead in his apartment. IV tubing doesn't usually wrap around your neck, not when you're walking around. But anyway, yeah, look up Philip Schneider, and he has one hell of a story to tell. Joe, what you got for us, Seth?
In regard to, what I did was I actually pasted the UFO activity over the town where the Green Lakes are. So that tells all the recent activity. But like I did say before, in not maybe a previous episode of S4. It may have been in a roundtable when I was still off on Friday nights. But I have been told by a former patient that I took care of before he died that there had been activity regarding certain bases like that around here, and that he could not disclose any further information. And I asked him, and I said, why not? And he said, well, I'm dying, but I still have living family who very much should still stay alive. And with that being said, I didn't press the issue. But he did confirm that there are certain things going on very close to here in terms of the underground. Here's a question in all the research. I'm sitting here thinking, listening to you guys, and I'm thinking, okay, is there a specific reason that certain races have targeted certain structures or bases? Has there been any correlation as to where you could take a guess or see a pattern as to why they're there?
I would say with some of the races, it depends on the climate, because you listen to the Alien Race Show, and we'll go over the different races in the book anyway. And some races, and they can actually manipulate the weather as well. There's a couple of races that can, where there's extremely hot heat in Texas. I know one year that came up, and there was a certain race that was visiting at that exact point in time. So I would say it depends on the race. It depends on what they can handle, heat and cold wise. That'd be one guess.
We got a question here from Trippin in the chat room. He says, it's interesting how Russia is having gas blowout holes, but has any been seen in Canada or other Northern Hemisphere equivalent areas?
Not that I've noticed.
Yeah, and that's the first I had heard of the Russian gas blowout holes, so I don't know. Seth?
I haven't heard anything on that as far as anywhere else. The Russia having the gas blowout holes is news to me. But Trippin, since you brought this to light, if you want to do any more research and pass it along, we would be glad to put it on here. I'm not going to
throw a link up. Throw a link up so we can check it out real quick.
But it makes you wonder, depending on what type of gas is coming out, if that's an energy discharge or a waste discharge. Unless it's natural, of course.
I don't know.
That's what I've been wondering.
As much activity of things as there is in Russia, I'm curious to know if those are gas blowouts or if they're underground alien base maybe that's releasing something.
Yes, since Russia is one of the few that's released information about alien versus the other ones.
Well, it's not just the information release, but there's quite a bit of activity that there lately. It seems like not just from stuff we've seen and what's been released, and but actual activity.
And we know from past shows and from past talking that the Mater and the Anakin are always at war. Now, Russia is an Anakin ally. So it could be an alien attack. That's always possible. Like Joe said, it's probably methane pockets escaping. But jumping on the alien side of it, yeah, it could very well be could be alien, could be underground bases collapsing.
Now the theory is, you've already got planes dumping chemicals on us. What's another route to do it? Blow it off into the air, I suppose, from wherever you're at. Could be something of that nature as well. There's lots of theories you could use for something like that. It could be anything from just like Michael and Joe were saying, about methane gas being released from permafrost melt. It's very possible. And then there is a couple other theories you could think of why something like that would happen too.
Yeah, right.
Giant alien farts. That's awesome, Michael. I like that. That's funny.
I like that one, Michael.
Hey, can't rule it out. That's what we're here for. Leave no stone unturned on S4.
Methane gas pockets. That's a big crater, too. For those that are in the chat room, yeah, the link is up.
Now that you said that with the methane gas pocket, here's a theory. If there are any subterranean species that can live down, maybe they're still down far enough that they can get some light. Who's to say that they don't have some sort of a livestock that's letting off the methane gas, much like our cows are?
And that's always possible. They're sitting in the dairy barn, and, they let it go, and there's your hole. And for those that are listening but not in the chat room, I did put the link for the methane blowholes in the Forest Moon Paranormal group. So, what dropped from says, so Joe's saying stuff dropped from satellites. What do you got, Joe? Or are you just making the comment? And let's see here.
Yeah, something dropped from a satellite, though, isn't going to necessarily make a big gaseous explosion straight upwards, blowing rock out and up. I could see that punching a hole and making some scatter and stuff like that, but I don't know if it would be blowing stuff out and up like that quite so much. I mean, I could be wrong, but just a thought.
Good.
Frozen, partially bloated dinosaurs are thawing out. Another good theory.
I like that. I like that one, actually. I like that one. And yeah, you see, we keep talking about Russians. I just my mind keeps going back to Dyatlov Pass. That's another story I'd like to find more information on.
Yeah, so like I said, there's a lot of stuff that seems to happen in Russia. I mean, a lot. We hear of lots of different things that happen here and around and other places, but man, there's a lot of stuff that seems to happen in Russia. A lot.
Russia's the new place to be.
I guess, if you're E.T.
Yeah. Maybe there's more to the Kremlin than we realize.
Could be.
It wasn't Putin who helped rig the election. It was the aliens. I would have no surprise by that, to be honest with you.
I
had to. I'm sorry.
My mind goes everywhere when, yeah. I really don't get surprised by a whole lot anymore if they dig through stuff.
Yeah. Putin, the alien scapegoat. So,
and whether the Earth is hollow or not, we still have aliens in underground bases we got to deal with. So, hollow Earth theory is a very small cry a small drop in the bucket.
This is just my thoughts on it. I personally, I would like to say that I'm a pretty open-minded person about a lot of stuff. I mean, look what I do. Look what I'm a part of. But as far as hollow Earth goes, I definitely don't buy in on it yet, for sure. Definitely more to be looked at, but I don't buy in on it. Now, with the activity that they talk about with some of the hollow Earth stuff, I would account a lot of that to probably the Alien. Alien I can get on board with, for sure. I mean, I've seen ships myself, so it's pretty hard to tell me no that there's no aliens. I can get on board with the fact that, yeah, we've probably got bases underground. We've got our own military that's got bases underground. We've more than likely have secret space programs, and I say, what a better place than at the poles to hide a lot of that stuff. But as far as hollow Earth goes, yeah, I'm not there.
No, the only, I guess you'd call him valid enough, would be Admiral Byrd. He's the only one I'd probably hang on to with a thread of any kind of belief. You're talking like a rear admiral in the Navy. You're not talking, in military can lie. I'll give them that. But you're talking a rear admiral in the Navy that has a lot to lose.
Yeah.
And, with the security clearance and whatnot, even back then, had a lot to lose. So, and he didn't come out with his diary until 1947, after, 20 years? So, I could get on board with him, but
yeah, the
other story, I don't know. And we were talking about this on the round table last Friday night, in that if you look at the way things twisted in about the 1930s, 1940s, that's when comic books and science fiction started really coming out. And did they make our reality today, or did the aliens and some of the stuff we see today come from the comic books? That's kind of, which came first, the chicken or the egg? The alien or the comic book?
Yeah, my one theory, my one thought, I should say, on Admiral Byrd is that, he was stated to be this big, adventurous explorer, right? The one thing that I have seen over time of adventurous explorers, admirals or not, is they like to be, shall we say, a little extra creative sometimes in their writing. And did he see something there? Did he see some stuff that's, we've discussed before, possibly aliens or something like that? Yeah, he may have. But my thoughts is that maybe some of it was slightly exaggerated a bit, maybe, to make it a little bit even more grandiose. Because, hey, if you're an adventurous explorer, what better way to make your adventures great than to add a little extra pizzazz to it?
Mm-hmm. Very well, very well. He could have increased the size of the fish, so to speak, adding to it a little bit. Now, a thought that I had regarding all of this, In the Hollow Earth theory, I think it's best for me to say, based upon what I know, based upon research, which I'm not an authority on very many subjects, but I'd have to say that perhaps maybe we think it's hollow because we've only been far enough down to where it is hollow. Maybe it's not entirely hollow. Maybe there's just parts that have been hollowed out. There's a story, and amazing things can be done. There's a story of one man whose wife, for years and years, it was in the Middle East, she would always have to go over the mountain to go to the market. He got tired of her having to go over the mountain and stuff like that. So he said, day by day, little by little, I'm going to dig down through this mountain. And he dug, and after a while, she didn't have to go over the mountain, and the path is a very known traveled road. So it's all about the will to get something done. But Coop and Corey, as far as the idea of did aliens come out of the comic or did the comic come out of the aliens? It could be said both, because I've had the idea of the theory of the propaganda killer. Corey and Coop see an alien. I'm a government agent who is set to put out some propaganda, so I'm going to write a story or tell someone to write a story about an alien who looks and sounds like the alien that Coop and Corey are going to tell everybody about. But then on the other hand, Coop, you got to think perhaps some of these things that came from these comics and whatnot were thought forms brought to life.
Me personally, I think that the comic book was the secondary. It's been stated that some of these races have been around for millions plus on years, and have been visiting this planet since way before we were a thought. So it's one of those things where it's, I would, if I had to venture to say, I'd say the alien came first, then the comic book. I think a lot of the comic book, the movies, as even you stated before, some of the cartoons and some of that stuff is all, a lot of it is all experience trying to be transformed into, hey, look, here it is, without having the Men in Black show up at your door, so to speak.
And if you look at the timeline too, I'm sitting here thinking back. A lot of the contactees actually started telling their stories and came out before the comic books did. I think it was Shaver that had bizarre stories or strange things. One of the two.
Yeah.
And he's actually friends. He's actually friends with some of the contactees, but there were contactees before them that were telling their stories about the Venusians and some of the other aliens that were contacting them before the comic books came out. So if you look at that perspective, the comic books took their stories from the contactees, and that's how science fiction got formed.
Yeah. Michael in the chat room's got a question as we're going along here. He says, what do you guys think is going on in Antarctica? Anything, or is it all fake BS? Personally, I think probably what's going on there is alien bases. And I think I think that's where government agencies are going to meet with these guys for who knows what reasons. We can assume, but we know a pretty good idea of what we know on some of that. But some of the shady deals that have been made in the past, were technology for abductions and such. So it's I would say it's probably that.
And if I remember right, Antarctica is also where Neuschwanstein was. That's where the Nazis were building UFOs in underground caverns in Antarctica as well, if I remember right. It's actually, again, in another archive where we talked about that one.
That's what they say. I kind of go along with Corey in that, because there is the Antarctic Treaty where just about every nation has their hand in the pot, so to speak, trying to say, okay, you can't lay claim to it, you can't lay claim to it. I think under the guise of that, there is something more sinister going on, because different people have reported independent explorers going on expeditions and stuff. Maybe Admiral Byrd may have stretched the truth, like Corey said. That's possible. However, you have to consider the fact that once he was there, after he waited and published his diaries, not long after, somebody decided that they didn't want the average Joe going down there. And that is what's been on my mind regarding the subject.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if there's a UN treaty involved with that as well.
Well, and if you think on that level, too, is that you could also have the supposed secret space program that's going on there as well. That there's a whole lot of stuff that could be happening there. I think most of it's all space related in some manner or another, whether it's a secret space program or we've got aliens down there, or both. But yeah, there's definitely got a point there to the fact that there's the Antarctic Treaty, to where that nobody else lays claim to it. Well, something has laid claim to it, and everybody's going to visit.
Exactly. I'm looking, as we're winding down here, I'm looking for Deep Springs. Now, Joe, I'm assuming Deep Springs is in California. And I know it's on my list. We've got Barstow. That's for Irwin, though. Yeah, Deep Springs, according to an agent who was part of a secret CIA paramilitary force called Yellow Fruit, or YF, based at the Nevada test site, where they are working with the blonde humanoid aliens in an effort to fight the Greys at Deep Springs. It is the basing area of a large nest of gray aliens and communist, I don't even buy that one, human collaborators who are using the National Resources Defense Council as a front for their agency, and who are involved in an electromagnetic war with the benevolent ones, who have made allies with the Nevada test site, who serve as advisors for intelligence agencies that are turning against the Greys as a result of betrayals of joint operation treaties. That would be the one. And nobody's going to come knocking on my door because, well, the Greys are everywhere. There's 11 billion secret government projects going on around here, around the world, and they're all talked about all over the internet. So,
I'm seeing in the chat room here talk about disclosure and stuff again, and I'd like to reiterate again that disclosure has happened. Disclosure has happened. There was UFOs that flew right over the White House, in plain view in front of everybody to say, "Hey, knock, knock, we're here." But you know what? Nobody ever seems to think about that. Nobody ever wants to recognize that. They keep waiting for some politician to stand up there and say, "Hey, there's aliens here." That's not going to happen. Because and as you guys said it before, the reason it's not going to happen is because then they're going to have to admit to the fact that they've let aliens abduct people. We're not talking about the experiencers, the guys who think that aliens are all wonderful and great because they had a great experience. Good for them. Right on. I'm talking about the guys who have been guys and gals who have been pulled off this planet, tortured, done all kinds of things to them. And, they're going to have to admit to that. And that's not going to happen. The only time that you're ever going to actually see that happen is the one day that aliens actually show up, stand on the ground in front of everybody and say, yeah, we're here now for sure, and you guys can't deny it. And then they're going to go, oh, well, yeah, exactly. But until then,
and the point,
no politician's going to admit it.
The point you got to bring up, too, though, is the panic factor. And so many say there's not going to be panic. Well, I'm sorry, but when there's aliens here that the government can't control and the government can't kill, or they might kill a couple of them, but when we're actually outnumbered, outgunned, out technologically advanced, and they can't protect the people, that's going to cause mass panic. So they really don't want disclosure. They're going to fight you tooth and nail to keep this disclosure from happening if that was the case.
Yeah.
Not to mention that, like you said, like they sold us down the river when they made the contract with the Greys. So yeah, the government, as long as they can keep the people thinking that disclosure means the president comes up and says it, we all know that have been in the field for a while. Disclosure happened back in the 50s with the White House flyover. So, yeah, just like in the paranormal. Why are we proving there's ghosts when the first picture proved it? When the first EVP, proved it? There's no more proof to be had because we know they exist. Now it's a matter of helping the people that need the help. That's what we do.
I don't think we're as technically negligent or backwards as everyone thinks we are. Did I lose somebody?
No.
Because I heard... Cooper, you still there?
Oh boy.
Might have lost Cooper. Cooper.
It says that he's still here.
Yeah, I know, but I think I lost him. I'm going to have to get him back.
While you're getting him back, I'm going to address the listeners real quick then. And then you can make your point so that Coop can have his input also. The scary thing is with disclosure, I think, or maybe an interesting thing rather, isn't that, okay, our government can't control them, our government can't fight them, fine. We know that they have technology to take us down. But what about the people who say, look, you guys really haven't been governing us that great. We're going to join up with these guys. We're going to, I'm tired of being a slave to a government that's failed me. I might be a slave to a race of reptilians for a while, or I might be a slave to the Mater for a while, because I'm getting sick of taxes. Right. It's possible.
Well, there's always that, but the point that I was going to get to there before we lost Coop and I got him back was that I don't think we're as technically backwards as everyone thinks we are. They have had a lot of time to get a lot of these crash ships and reverse engineer this stuff, and I'm telling you right now, I would be willing to bet that the governments themselves have got a lot more pretty high-end technology than we all think. And when it comes down to, an all-out, let's just say, for the heck of it, laser battle, I think we were probably going to find out that we could probably hold our own fairly well. They just aren't telling us that we can.
And it's very possible. And on that note, it's time to wrap it up. It's been a good show.
It has been.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes, for
So,
sure.
I hope you all enjoyed it. And next week, we're talking CERN. Yes, CERN.
The concern with CERN.
It's a special request of one of our Forest Moon members that wants to know what CERN is. So we're talking CERN next week. And we might throw a little bit of HARP in there. You guys up for that? Talk a little bit
Sounds
about
like a
HARP.
plan.
I like it.
HARP and CERN. All right.
And if you would like, I'll read my transcript of the interview I had with Ben Halima regarding CERN.
Oh, I like that.
I will definitely do that. Before we close up, I want to invite all the listeners to check out my page, Dark 30 Quickening. And on there, coming up this week, I'm going to do it sectionally in a couple weeks because I have over 3 hours with this gentleman. I am uploading an interview that was originally pulled from YouTube. And he has given me permission now to re-upload it because he wants his story out there. So it will be uploaded to that page this week in segments. So be looking out for that. As far as I go, good night, ladies and gentlemen.
All right. Until next week, y'all sleep well. Have a safe week. See you next Sunday.
Thank you and good night.